October, Pakistan's interim government set 1st of November deadline for illegal immigrants to depart voluntarily with deportation and asset confiscation consequences. A new task force was established to enforce this, imposing legal consequences for those aiding non-compliance.
There are hundreds of thousands of refugees in Pakistan currently from Afghanistan. The number is estimated to be around 3 million, and many of them have been registered by the UNHCR in collaboration with the Pakistan government. So the Pakistan government and UNHCR entered into an agreement whereby Pakistan and the UNHCR decided to work together to facilitate the registration of certain refugees. However, due to certain gaps and weaknesses in the way that and inconsistencies in the way that this policy has been implemented, there are many refugees, genuine refugees who are undocumented, and especially a wave of refugees that came from Afghanistan to Pakistan in 2021 after the Taliban took over Afghanistan. Many of those are undocumented, and that of course includes women and children. So one significant reservation that we have is that there are many people who are genuinely refugees, and they have the right to remain in their host country and not be repatriated to their home country where there is a fear that they will face violence or other human rights violations. Many of them are not properly documented due to no fault of their own at all. But under this policy, they are being repatriated and sent back to Afghanistan, and that is a significant human rights violation. At the same time, because we've had refugees from Afghanistan in Pakistan now for decades, for going on 4 decades, there are many people who have spent a majority of their lives from Afghanistan, who have spent a majority of their lives in Pakistan, and many people of Afghan descent who are born in Pakistan, and therefore they have a right to claim citizenship by birth, but they are not properly documented, because there are many people in Pakistan, citizens included, who do not have adequate documentation. And we fear, and actually what we are seeing on the ground is that many such people are also being detained, arrested, and there's a real danger that they are also being sent back to Afghanistan, although this is really the only country that they have known. And because this process is taking place without any transparency whatsoever, without any mechanism being provided to these people to actually challenge their detention or their deportation, without giving them any access to any independent organization, including the UNHCR at this point, without giving them any access to legal counsel and legal advice, we fear that many people who have a right to be here in Pakistan and remain in Pakistan are being forcibly deported.
Millions of Afghan refugees were instructed to leave Pakistan by 1st of November, citing their association with the surge in terrorism. The caretakers also hinted at allegations of smuggling, black market activities, and involvement in the drug trade.
It was sometime in early October that the federal government announced that it would begin to deport undocumented refugees in about a month's time, and then gave them a November 1st deadline. And then on November 1st, the federal government, through provincial governments, began to implement this policy of detaining people that it deemed or claimed were undocumented refugees or quote unquote illegal immigrants, and it began to arrest them and detain them in certain holding centers established for that purpose, and then would send them to the Afghan-Pakistan border, where they would be repatriated. Essentially a policy of mass deportation. And the problem with this policy is that it is extremely arbitrary. and it is not in line with international law that provides certain protections to refugees and political asylum seekers, and it's not in line with Pakistan's constitution either, which guarantees everybody a right to hearing and due process before any kind of adverse action may be taken against them.
In the weeks that followed, Pakistan authorities launched extensive roundups of Afghan migrants, even those residing for decades. Convoys headed to Torkham, processing 3,000 to 4,000 refugees daily, resulting in over 250,000 claimed voluntary returns thus far. This decision has now been challenged by civil rights activists.
Some concerned citizens have filed a petition before the Sindh High Court, where we have specifically challenged the Sindh government's implementation of this policy. That petition was put up last week before the court. However, on the first instant, the court raised certain doubts about the maintainability of the petition, and one of the primary objections that they raised was that the court seemed to feel that fundamental constitutional rights cannot be claimed by people who could possibly be foreigners, and that position is not consistent with the language of the Constitution, which guarantees a right to due process and a right to a life to all persons in Pakistan. It is not restricted to people who are citizens or who are documented as being citizens, and therefore, of course, our position is that their rights ought to be protected by the state and ought to be protected by the court. However, these questions on maintainability were raised, and the court then adjourned the matter for about another 3 weeks, which will be 2 weeks from now, and did not issue notices, unfortunately, to the government. Certain concerned citizens and prominent activists have also filed a petition before the Supreme Court on the same issue, calling on the federal government to reverse this policy of mass deportation. But unfortunately, that petition was returned by the registrar of the Supreme Court, who found that the petition was not maintainable. However, an appeal against that decision of the registrar has been filed, and one of the main grounds for that challenge is that the registrar of the Supreme Court does not have the authority to determine the maintainability of the petition, and at the same time, there are serious fundamental rights concerns that are of public importance that are in fact being raised in the petition. So unfortunately, so far, we haven't been able to get the urgent relief that we require from our courts, given that this policy is ongoing and given that people are being detained and being deported en masse on a daily basis. However, we can only hope, we will keep these cases alive, and we can only hope that our courts do grant some relief so that some of the impacts of this policy can at least be mitigated, and so that so that our governments can also be restrained from implementing any such policies in the future that are arbitrary and inconsistent with the rights of refugees, and that push the government to actually develop a rights-based domestic legal framework that protects the rights of refugees and also regulates their status in accordance with the Constitution and international law.